Welcome, everybody. We're so excited to welcome you into the webinar today. This is a very popular topic for many of you, and certainly for Alkami. By way of introduction, my name is Allison Cerra. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Alkami, and I am so excited to introduce our special guest today. He is back by exceptionally popular demand. He's a friend of Alkami and a friend to many of you. It is none other than Jason Dorsey, President for the Center for Generational Kinetics. Jason, my friend, it is always good to have you in the house.
Woohoo! Thank you, Allison, for
Woohoo!
inviting me back. It's great to be with you. Always love the energy and expertise you bring to everything we do. So, honored to be with you today. And thank you for everybody joining. This is such an exciting topic. We have great new insights and discoveries to share with you. And I'm thrilled to get to be a part of this conversation. So, thank you, Allison, for inviting
Well,
me. It's going to be fun today.
Jason, our clients would have had a mutiny on me, on my head, if we did not bring you back because we have had you on the program before. We've had studies with you before. And when I tell you your studies are consistently among the most popular fare that we do, and for good reason, it's really our clients were demanding, look, we need more Jason. So we're excited to have
Woohoo!
you here.
I like that.
And we've got an exciting study to talk about. You are all
Mhm.
about generations, and I like to say, Jason, you were doing generations before generational research was cool. You've been in that club for a more than a hot minute, and this is kind of your main area of expertise. You've published on this. You're an author. You do research on this consistently. And so, just to ground the audience, just a few key questions. What exactly is a generation?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for sort of providing some background. We've led over 140 studies into generations, all about separating myth from truth. We've never done a study like the one we're about to share today. So that's really exciting for me. At the same time, there's so much said about generations that's just not true. And so you and I know this because we've talked about it many times. But when we approach the idea or the concept of a generation, it's really important to just start with what a generation is. The research center that I run is called the Center for Generational Kinetics, and we're constantly trying to make sure that we're accurately thinking about generations. So when we think about what a generation is, the easiest way is to think about it is that a generation is a group of people born about the same time and raised in about the same place. And there's two things that I want to make sure we highlight there. So one is they're about the same age, right? We all sort of know that, a birth cohort. But what's not talked about enough is the impact of geography. So that's where the raised in about the same place, because you want to understand the geography that the research or the generation is representing. So then you know, oh, this is who they're talking about. When we think about generations, importantly, we view them as clues and not a box. Anybody who's heard me speak at the amazing events that you've been on, they know that this idea that generations are clues and not a box is helpful because we get to say everybody's still unique, no question about it. At the same time, there are things that connect us. And the better we understand those, the better we can understand different perspectives, create empathy, connection, influence, all those important things that bring us together. And when we think about the role of people that are in banking or in various types of credit unions, like it's really important that you're working with multiple generations every single day. So the better you understand what a generation is, the better you can understand how to bridge them. So when we think about generations, clues, not a box, group of people born about the same time, raised in about the same place, shaped by all kinds of different things. There's a few that jump out that I think are most important. I know you and I have talked about these many times. One that I love to talk about is parenting. Parenting has a huge impact on generations. So if I want to understand a generation, who do I actually have to study? Their parents, right?
That's
Another
pretty
big
cool.
trend that shapes generations, absolutely, is technology. And what our research has shown is every generation has a different natural relationship with technology that is largely driven by our age. And we'll see that in your study today, which is so beautifully done because it talks about millennials and how they're engaging with banking and digital banking and thinking about their future and all these different things around that. So it's important to think about parenting and technology. Of course, you have other trends like economics, you have generation defining moments like COVID. All of these go in that shape generations. So the key thing for me when we think about understanding generations, making it most helpful, is they're clues and not a box. So if we start with those, we can really build on the bigger conversation. And something unexpected, that's a fun question. I didn't know that was coming. That's an unexpected question.
We
Something
try to
unexpected.
stump occasionally.
Well, it works frequently. I would say something unexpected about generations is that we predict here at CGK that probably within the next 20 years, the concept of a generation will go away. Not great for my business since it's all about generations. But at some point, the pace of change is just going to be so fast that you won't see enough what we call predictability by scenario across a group that's born over this sort of period of time. Now, that's not happened yet. We're even seeing with Gen Alpha, the youngest generation, a lot of consistency. But at some point, the concept of a generation won't be as accurate or actionable as it is today. Today, we help companies all around the world put these practices, their insights into action and drive measurable results. But at some point, this is probably not going to be as relevant or helpful as it is right now, where it's massively helpful and we generate all these amazing outcomes for people. So that's unexpected. I won't tell you it keeps me up at night, but it is one of those things that, in 20 years, I'm gonna have to find a new thing to do.
Well, that's crazy. Jason, that's I seriously, it's the first time I've heard you say that, and that blows my mind because we've been studying generations just as cohorts for, what seems like forever, right? It's just
Hmm.
and I find that to be so fascinating that because of the rate of pace and change of what you're already seeing and studying, that this may become a moniker that no longer becomes as interesting to define, which I find to be that's amazing. I've never heard somebody say that before, but you heard it here first, folks. That,
Hey,
that this
woo-woo.
might be something in a few years, 20 years. Let's say 20 years. The next generation of leaders may not be looking at generations as seriously.
Exactly. Yeah, and you actually sort of alluded to it in a very insightful way in terms of how you approached it without trying to approach it this way. You said we've talked about sort of demographics for a long time, and
Yeah,
generations are an evolution in my mind of demographics because we figured
yeah,
out a 25-year-old today is different than a 25-year-old 40 years ago. But what we didn't
that's
do is
right.
sort of follow them along, right? And so as they pass through different life stages, we kept kind of comparing them to the past, and it's just not accurate. And that's why generations are so much more helpful than just looking at basic demographics. But in the future, we'll see, how predictable those really are. So I don't know. Y'all should do a study on AI. I'm sure you haven't thought of
We might
that.
have something in the queue on AI. No, this is so cool. And why are we focused on millennials, a generation near and dear to your heart? What kind of
Hmm.
as we started doing this study, and this study, to be clear, goes across all generations from boomers to Zs.
Hmm.
But the
Absolutely.
white paper and the content and the webinar we're going to talk about today really shines the spotlight on millennials. Can you give us your perspective on why millennials are in an interesting time right now to be studied?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing up the fact that there's every generation was in the study. That's really important to create what we call generational context, which you and I've talked about many times. The reason we focus today's presentation and the white paper on millennials is millennials that are really a sort of interesting moment or period of truth. They are now well into their early 40s, which is important. Most people think they're 25. There are no 25-year-old millennials. They don't exist anymore. They've all gotten older. So they're at this key point where they're also potentially going to be the recipients of a major wealth transfer, massive. So that's sort of on the horizon. We know it's there. Everybody's sort of debating what that looks like, but it's clearly there. So we know that's going to happen. So if you're an FI, it's really important to be aware of that and understanding how you're starting to bridge that. And we're also seeing millennials drive new household creation. They're creating their own wealth, which is super exciting. They're starting businesses. They're increasingly in leadership roles, largest generation in the workforce. So all of these things are happening at the same time. They're not the 25-year-olds that people often sort of think about, right? They're well past that. So if you want to create stability for your financial institution, if you want to create stability for your own career, it's incredibly important to have accurate data and insights into millennials at this important time in their life. And that's why we oriented today's presentation around that and the study and the white
I
paper.
love it. I love it, Jason. One thing that you said that was so powerful when we were pulling the study together, two key things that we were looking at. One is it's hard to believe, but we're 15 years now post the Great Recession, and these millennials, those born in the 80s, really did come of age during the Great Recession. So at a time that the economy was most rocked and many felt it, perhaps the millennial generation felt it the hardest because they were coming
Mm,
of age during that pivotal point. And the other thing that you said that was so interesting was this is kind of the first time in their adult lives that they've seen an inflationary rate environment. Money
hmm.
has been free for their basically their existence of adulthood, and so we have this interesting kind of dynamic happening of 15 years post the Great Recession. How is this generation coming along? And oh, by the way, first time pretty much ever in their adult lives they're seeing an inflationary rate environment which is foreign to them. So I thought that was also really powerful as we were kind of collaborating on the study. Um, so yeah, that's awesome. Okay, I'll cover this, Jason. This is kind of the perfunctory like methodology slide, and it's important because not all research is created equal. And I will say the research that you and the team at CGK do is second to none. What's
Oh, thank
important
you.
for the audience to understand is that this research went to 1,500 US participants across all the generations, again, with statistical relevance from Gen Z all the way to boomers. But the one thing that you and your team do so exceptionally well is you weight the sample to the 2020 US Census for things like age and gender, ethnicity, region. We really make sure, and you make sure, that this research is representative of the population so that when FIs or others look at this research, they're basically knowing this is a representative sample of US demographics and certainly weighted statistically for each of the generations to be represented. And I think that's super important for the audience to understand because how many times, Jason, have we seen research where you like talk to 20 people? Not exactly
Yeah,
statistically significant. So I think it's important. I think the
yeah.
margin of error on this thing is like, 2.5% or less. So we're talking a
Mhm.
very tight MOE on the research as well, which also gives it a lot of credibility.
Yeah, I mean, this is the type of research. This is a flagship research for us. This is the type of research we would make business decisions based upon. I mean, it is as accurate as you can pretty much get for this type of research, most representative, and it's a true snapshot, which I think is important because if you're a leader, you don't just need more data. We all got plenty of data. What you need is statistically accurate insights that you can then make decisions based around, and that's what we delivered here. And I always appreciate that you and your team care deeply about the methodology. Nobody ever says the word perfunctory, so thank you for using that to set up this slide. That made me very happy.
You can use
But
that later
really,
at your
like
next party.
the
Yeah.
beauty of this is you can. Yeah, that's going to be great. I'm going to use it in Scrabble. Watch out.
Yes.
It's going to be
Yes.
amazing. So yeah, we're really excited about the rigor of this study. It's great.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, so we're going to go through the like five key insights. And I'll let you take this one, take it away. But kind of as you say, you're all about separating truth from fiction. Let's talk about the truth of millennials today in today's economy and what kind of we thought was interesting from the study here.
Mhm. Yeah, what I love about this insight, what we discovered is that navigating from Great Recession setbacks, to this rising interest rate headwinds, you set it up beautifully, right? You people like myself entered the workforce after the Great Recession and basically crashed into it, right? This wall of challenge, all these economic headwinds. We could go through a whole long list of what that was like. But at the end of the day, that was the start of adulthood and our careers or really early career stages. And then people, millennials like me, finally felt like, hey, we're moving in the right direction, and then boom, talk about inflation and these interest rates and how that's affected our ability to buy homes and debt levels and so many other things that we've wanted, even delaying kids and much more. So that is the reality on the ground today. And what did the study find? We found that 73%, so almost three quarters of all millennials, say the rising interest rate environment has significantly impacted their standard of living. I mean, if I was here, I would highlight and circle and put a big star on that because that is their perception of reality and that's what they're living. And notice that that's more so that impact more so than Gen Xers and baby boomers. So oftentimes when people talk about, for example, inflation or rising interest rates, they tend to think other people are having the same experience, and that's not the case here. Millennials are being more impacted than anyone else. At the same time, we found that 65% of millennials are living paycheck to paycheck. I think that's very shocking for people to see because you're like, well, millennials are 40. They should have it figured out. Well, having it figured out and the financial realities they're dealing with are different. And so that means almost two-thirds of all millennials say that they're living paycheck to paycheck right now. That's massive, frankly, for our country because millennials are the largest generation in the workforce. And then just over a quarter of all millennials say that buying a home hinders wealth. I'm going to say that again because sometimes it slips by people.
It's crazy.
Over a
This
quarter
one
of
was the
millennials,
crazy one.
yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
say it hinders wealth as opposed to building it. I think this one is one of the most important stats we'll share today because so often people want to debate the American dream. Well, for many
Yeah.
people, the American dream, as defined, is being able to buy a house. And now you have a quarter of a generation saying, well, buying a house actually holds you back when it comes to building wealth, which is a direct challenge to sort of the traditional definition of the American dream. Like these insights are just wild in explaining what's going on right now.
That last one especially, Jason, to your point, is literally challenges the conventional wisdom that anybody on the street, like, hey, what's the American dream? They would say owning a home. You have a generation who is redefining what that is now. And just more and more you're seeing it even in the news circuit of the benefits of renting over buying, and like where you can now invest your money if you're not buying a home or buying property. And so it really is being upended right now and being redefined both by the environment that we're in as well as a generation that is defining its own rules. And I think that was pretty interesting in the
Mhm.
study, to say the least. Yeah. All right, the
Yeah,
next
well,
one.
and it
Yeah.
challenges conventional success. I love it.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
Oh, number two. Here we
Absolutely.
go.
Yeah.
So,
So let's talk about
frequently when
them.
I
Why
speak,
do I care?
Mhm,
Jason, why do I care if I'm an FI, right? We know that the great intergenerational wealth transfer is afoot, but let's just say I'm a cynic and I'm like, yeah, but how important are these millennials to an FI? Let's talk about what the study kind of found in the way they think about the FI relationships they have.
yeah, one of the things I see because I speak at so many banking, credit union, personal finance type events is they're like, oh, why should we care about millennials? Well, this study revealed that millennials are should be an urgent imperative, really, not just strategy, but putting into practice and making an investment. Basically, 30% of millennials plan to grow their number of financial providers with whom they have a financial relationship over the next 12 months. So that means immediately almost a third of the biggest generation in the United States wants to grow their number of financial providers. That's massive. I mean, we typically what we see are financial institutions hemorrhaging, right? Losing customers, losing those who are trying to serve, losing members, or feeling like their financial products are going down. Millennials are at a different place, and that's really important because they are the clear and present opportunity. Millennials are 2.5 times more likely to grow their number of financial providers over the next year when we compare them to Gen X and baby boomers. So if you think about investing to attract and keep and develop customers or members, millennials are where you're going to get the highest ROI. And we also see that 50% of millennials consider a major national bank or credit union their primary financial institution. So there's a lot that you can start to unpack depending on how you want to look at that one. But the key is millennials are up for grabs right now. They're shopping right now. They're considering the different options. And if you take the time to understand them and adapt to them, you can unlock the tremendous potential that they bring. So that I would argue there's never been a better time to step up and really seek to engage millennials than it is right now. And this study really proves it out. And maybe I'm too passionate
Exactly.
about that, Allison.
No, no.
Maybe.
I think you were 100%, and that last data point spells opportunity for every regional and community FI listening to this right now, because that means half of them don't have a relationship with you right now. And if they're looking, a third of them are looking to expand
Mm,
the number of relationships with whom they have. That is nothing but upside for those on this call to actually use that as an acquisition play to go after millennials who are at that moment, to your point, shopping right now in the next 12 months and looking for new providers to meet their needs. So I couldn't agree
mhm,
more. Um, and then as we kind of keep going through this, so that's kind of saying, look, they're in the buying market, they're looking for new opportunities. But Jason, you and the team also found that they also are actually very attractive customers or members when you bring them into your ranks based on their product penetration. So the next insight kind of
mhm.
speaks to that as well.
Yeah, and I like to set it up with this stat here at the top, which is 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day. People love to talk about boomers because they have the money, but they're not always going to have the money. The change is upon us. Just ask the boomers you know. So they're moving into this new life phase, which oftentimes is kind of less valuable, less strategic for a lot of banks and credit unions when we think about all the different types of products and things that are happening out there. So, what do we see in the study? We found that over half, 56% of millennials are more likely to grow their relationship with their primary financial institution over the next 12 months than Gen Xers and baby boomers. So, again, when we think about growth, and we've got to move out of this scarcity mindset into growth. When we think about growth, millennials are going to be the driver of growth. Remember, they're well into their 40s now. These are not the 25-year-olds that you see on Facebook ads, right? Like these are people that are well into their 40s that have their own kids. They've been working for 20, 25 years. They are our ideal customer or ideal member. We just have to sort of reframe in our mind that they are a perfect fit and now is the right time. What else do we see? The study found that millennials have 14% and 28%. Now, this part's important. More products with their primary financial institution than Gen Xers and baby boomers. So that means not only are they likely to grow their relationships, but they have more products. That means you can help them in more ways. And they're already demonstrating that with their data today. So this is not a 10-year from now opportunity. This is not a missed opportunity. This is a right now opportunity. And we're seeing not only with their aspirational desire to grow their accounts or and grow the way that they work with you, but also the fact that they've already done this right now today when compared to Gen X and boomers. It just speaks to how important this opportunity is for every financial institution to take action and have a clear, actionable millennial strategy. This is the moment. And there's tons, by the way, in the report. I hope you all get the report. Like there's so much for y'all to be able to put into practice. We're just scratching the surface today, but just know there is a ton out there that you're going to want to be able to take and put into action. I get so fired up because I feel like
I love
somebody
it.
needs to
And
do
Jason,
this.
yeah, and Jason, it goes to your earlier point about where they are in their life stage. They're likely to have more products because these are people that are likely to have the home loans or the upcoming student loans for maybe the kids in the family, or obviously more credit cards or debit cards or financial planning because now they're starting into those in the 40s looking at that more seriously. So they're actually at the right life stage that kind of lends
Mm-hmm.
itself to this notion of they are a highly attractive market to an FI because they are both looking to grow their relationships and to grow the relationship with the
Mm-hmm.
PFIs they already have. So I think
Yep,
to your point earlier,
absolutely.
this is their ripe right now based on where they are in the prime of their lives. I
Mm-hmm.
love it. I love it. All right. So we talk in this study, there's kind of two paths to the millennials. There's the path to the ticket to entry, as we call it, and then we'll talk the ticket to differentiation. Let's talk first the ticket to entry. Talk a little bit about what we found and how do you get access to these millennials as
Mm-hmm.
they're looking to kind of create new relationships with new providers.
Like I love this because it's everything that we've seen over and over, but crystallized in just a few stats. And you're like, almost want to put like the palm to the head, like, of course. But check this out. 48% of millennials have been so frustrated trying to complete a digital banking task that they just gave up.
They don't even
That's
want to
almost
try
half of
any
the entire
further. They're like,
generation.
forget it. Hmm.
So people are like, well, do we really need to get our digital banking right? I don't know, but it sure
Yeah.
seems like that would be a major path to be able to engage this generation. What we also found was 58% of millennials likely to change financial providers if another, this part's key, if another offered a better digital banking experience, way more than older generations, dramatically more than older generations. So when we think about this, I just want you to notice you can come at it from pain or you can come at it from opportunity. The pain is if you don't have what you need, they are going to leave because they're incredibly frustrated right now. They can't believe why some of this technology feel stuck in the 1990s because everything else in their life is not like that. Or at the same time, if you want to grow with them, then whoever is adapting right now has the opportunity and they're looking and they're moving. So, whichever way you want to approach it, I mean, there's sort of a two for one, right? Just roll out the new tech and you'll be able to really make the most of them on both sides of this, keep the ones you have and add more. But if you don't, people are going to vote with their feet or, frankly, with their screen time here.
That's right.
Now,
That's
the
right.
bottom part of this, Allison, I think you and I always have fun talking about. So, the top reasons a primary financial institution earns distinction among millennials, these are pretty interesting. 46%, this is where I do most of my digital banking. My direct deposit goes to this provider. It's where I keep the most money. This is where debit card I use most often is. I've been with FI the longest. I mean, you can sort of see how all of these play together. We find that when it comes to millennials and banking, there's not one sort of magic wand thing. If you just do this one thing, everything works. It's always a combination of different things. Now, it tends to connect through technology, which ultimately drives connection and trust. But at the end of the day, it's not just getting one thing right. It's a series of things that we want to be able to do to solve a lot of different needs, as we see here in this particular answer set. What jumps out to you on this one? I love
So
asking these
what jumps
questions.
out to me, two things that jump out to me, and Jason, something you've educated me on is, I think you said it really well. When I think you said, look, millennials are not, we think tech addicted. They're not tech addicted. They're tech dependent. And I think it's a really
Mm-hmm.
important distinction because I think you imagine in your mind, oh, a millennial is going to tolerate technology because they've grown up with it, so they're not going to abandon the task. And you think they have a
Mm-hmm.
higher tolerance than perhaps they actually do because they are tech dependent. They expect the technology to work, and they don't have much
Mm-hmm.
patience if the technology is not where they expect it to be. I thought that was really interesting. And then your point around like, why does an institution earn the PFI status for them. We've asked this question in separate studies among regional and community FIs, and we've asked regional and community FIs, why do you think
Mhm.
an individual with your institution would say that you are their PFI? And the number one reason by a big margin is where the direct deposit goes. And what we've seen with
Mhm.
this research and other research that you've done for us around these generations is that separation between my direct deposit, which used to be the gold standard of how we defined a PFI, is now being rivaled more and more by other things, inclusive of the gateway of digital banking. So I think it speaks to this fact of it's about the access, the convenience, the ubiquity of having a great digital banking experience is more likely to top the reasons of like why I would consider you my PFI. That doesn't mean direct deposit isn't important because you see it up there too. But I think FIs may have a different perspective on that that might need to be challenged a bit and relooked at to say, are you really putting the priorities around your digital investments to
Mhm.
making sure that you're aligned with where your consumers increasingly, especially generations like millennials, see this question?
Yeah, and we see this in a variety of industries where sort of some of the legacy thinking, like frankly, the metrics of success or how they define something just don't keep up with changes of consumers. And that's what's
Yeah,
happened here. Consumers are basically saying in this particular case, like the digital experience is how I define this over the fact that I happen to do my direct deposit. Like it's never been easier to move direct deposit than it is right now. If you want to keep people,
right.
you got to keep them through the overall digital banking experience. If you don't have that, you're not going to be able to feel confident that you're going to keep them. And I think this is a problem where sometimes people are so focused on one metric while still important, it's not the only one. And when that
Right.
happens, you can totally miss everything else going on that's actually driving a lot more of the behavior. So that's why I love asking questions like this because you're like, whoa, I never thought about them. And in this order, what?
I know. It's so good. All right. So if that's the ticket to entry is like you got to make sure your digital house is in order just because they
Mhm.
expect it. What you also found is that there's a key path to differentiation, and millennials were so unique in the study on this insight that they really are the breakaway generation here. I want you to talk about key
Yeah.
insight number five.
Yeah, sure. Here, these all go together. It's great. So, what we found in the national study, again, this study represented age, gender, geography, ethnicity. We had oversamples of different groups to make sure we really covered everyone. And what we found was 65% of millennials say that relevant product recommendations are very important or important to them when it comes to their digital banking experience. What I want you to notice, look how much higher that is from Gen Z and baby boomers. So, when we think about these two other big generations, what do you get? Almost 20 points of difference when it comes to millennials saying that product recs are important or very important for their digital banking experience. What a massive opportunity. What's the obvious answer? Like, get the product recs out there, like, make this happen. They're waiting for it more than any other group, which is really incredible. We also found that 51% of millennials are comfortable with their financial data being processed by AI if it gives them a better banking experience. So, this is kind of a fun one. So, 51% is, a majority, a slight majority. But just notice if we would have done this a few years ago, because we've done variations of this question, not specific to banking, but we've certainly done it in other ways, the acceptance of AI has continually increased and moved up and up and up and up, particularly when we define it in certain ways. And now people see it all over the world every time. I mean, they're using it constantly. So that's really changing, which means that if I'm an FI, I need to get on the AI bandwagon to make sure that I'm using that financial data to generate a better banking experience, whether that's recommendations, engagement, communication, behavioral nudges, all of these things. Like now is the time because that number is only going to go up, which means if you don't get on it now, the expectations will be even higher in the future. So, really important there. And then we also found that more than half, 55% of millennials, wish that their financial provider offered, here's the key, a more personalized digital banking experience. So, if you start to put this together, what do you get? People want that differentiated, unique experience to them. Millennials in particular want the recommendations, they want you to use AI, and they want you to make it very personalized. Now, the good news is those all go together. So,
That's right.
you can make all of them happen together. But the key is you have to take action. You can't just have one size fits all anymore because it increasingly does not work. And millennials, frankly, don't want it. I'm
That's
probably going
right.
to get in trouble for saying that because I'm too on my soapbox, but it is so important people hear it.
Yeah, and like you said, this was one in the study that you look and so many people are talking personalization that sometimes it's hard to kind of it becomes just kind of this meme almost where you kind of get deaf to it. This study was so abundantly clear that millennials more so than any other generation, whether we were looking at the AI willingness
Mhm,
to use their data, or to your point, how much more they want a recommendations, how important are they to them, or how much more they want a personalized experience.
mhm,
The breakaway, it was a
mhm,
breakaway, and I think
mhm.
it kind of goes to this
Yeah.
notion of what they've grown up with. It goes to this notion of the struggle is real financially for them. So if there's a way for
Mhm,
them to get more tailored recommendations, tailored financial wellness tips and guidance, they're primed for it. And I
mhm,
think it's interesting because you imagine in your mind's eye, well, millennials are going to be data, data attractive segments, but Z certainly will be even more so. You almost assume, oh, the younger generations are always going to want more. This is a case where the millennials want more than the Zs on this highly personalized
mhm,
experience, which I thought was interesting because typically in these generational studies, you see adoption get more receptive as you go younger cohorts because it's what they've been acculturated using. In this case,
mhm.
it's millennials break away even from the youngest cohort in the study on how much they favor this highly personalized experience.
Yeah, and we know that millennials feel like they're at a very tenuous time.
Yep,
You've pointed out sort of how they started out and what they've crashed into. They've got this new household, formation. There's all this stuff going on, and they see what happens because they've been through it. If they don't get their financial decisions, if they don't make the right financial decisions, they don't get their financial house in order. So it makes complete sense that they would have a higher expectation. I would argue a demand for better recommendations, things that are more personalized and tailored to them because they don't want to mess it up. There's tremendous pressure within the generation right now to make the right financial decisions because they are getting older. They have kids, they have all these things, and they've also seen what's happened to the generations before them. I
yep,
think sometimes people forget baby boomers get Social Security. Gen X is probably even going to get it. There's a good chance that millennials won't, or certainly not in the way
that's
they
right.
want, which just adds to the pressure. And it's not like it's some far off goal. They can see it in the horizon and they want to make sure that they got to do everything they can right now to either recover from what they've been going through or to continue to build on whatever the successes they've had. So it's a really stressful time. And to me, when I go back to the purpose of FIs, because I'm a lot about purpose, like
Yes,
helping people make better decisions is to me at the core of all of this. And this is how millennials want to have it happen. I
I
mean,
love
just
it.
the data just tells it loud and clear.
I love it. And so, Jason, you can walk through this any way you want, but these are kind of like the top five on a slide here of
Yeah.
what we found in this study.
Mhm. Yeah, so some of this is sort of big picture and it also gets very specific, and I like that. So when we think about this, millennials are the nation's future wealth holders. I want to pause there to remind everybody millennials are already the largest generation in the workforce, largest generation of managers. They're at this sweet spot for potential wealth transfer in the future. So we know that's coming. And they have enough experience where they've started to really accumulate their own wealth. So they're at this key point. If you want to make inroads, now is the time. I'll say it differently. If somebody's been with, let's pretend, a financial institution for 10 years, it's going to be harder to get them to move to yours. But if you get them right now, then you get the benefit of the next 10 years. And they're going to bring their friends and their family and all those wonderful things that they want. We also see is that, and the data showed this several times, millennials have more products with their primary FI than all the other generations. So this idea that millennials don't want to engage or aren't engaging is complete nonsense. It's extremely clear in the data that they are engaging with their personal FI or primary FI. And in this particular case, they're also using more of the products and services that are offered, right? They're absolutely in the right time, in the right place, and y'all are the right group to provide it. We also see that they're going to increase their number of financial providers, and the secret here is over the next 12 months. This is not pie in the sky 5 years from now. This is, hey, we've got to grow this year. This is who we want to grow with. And digital banking clearly is key. We saw, remember how that digital banking experience was even higher up than direct deposit? We're going to see more and more and more of that. So if we want to be able to connect with them, we got to know what they want and that deep personalization as we saw in the last slide. Remember, they count on this more than other generations, younger or older. They want that deep level of personalization and they want the recommendations. Don't think, well, boomers don't like it. Why would millennials? They're totally different. Of course, millennials want it. All right. So just be aware. This is really key. And then the data informed digital banking is really what not just the future looks like, but what the now looks like when it comes to millennials. So we want to make sure that we start to use that data, get all data we can, apply AI with it, and really unlock the value. This is what millennials are going to expect, and now is the time to do it. And I'm getting off my
I
soapbox now.
Jason, I am all in with you, my friend. You were so good. I love the wrap up. That's perfect. And one thing I love, many things I love about you, Jason. One thing I love about you is every time we do a study together, you are so fanatical about like how do we make this practical? What are they going to do Monday
Mhm,
morning after they read this report? What would you give them as prescription of like what they can do to, not feel overwhelmed by the findings, but actually do something? And so with that, I just want to kind of we have a poll. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. So there's a poll. The respondents here will see, and you can request more information. But I want to get to what do I do? I've
mhm,
downloaded the report. I've looked at it, but tell me kind of in your bird's eye, and I can take the first one, and we can kind of like tag team this because there's one
mhm,
study that we've done here at Alkami that actually measures an institution's digital maturity against 200 and plus other institutions in the US, from mega banks all the way down to institutions, regional and community FIs,
mhm,
neobanks are in this study. So we actually have an
mhm,
assessment, Jason, on alchemy.com. 5 questions that were the most statistically relevant in a much bigger battery of questions that'll tell you where you are across 4 cohorts of maturity on digital maturity as an
I love that.
institution, and what we would recommend you do next. So that's about getting your digital house in order, which we know from this study is super important. So
Mm,
we're trying to give them prescription there. Obviously, they can speak to us about that. But for you, talk to me about like what CGK. How can they follow you? How can they get in touch with your organization, whether to have you speak at an event or otherwise?
mhm.
Because you're always doing research around these generations.
Yeah, I've spoken at 3, banking events in the last week and a half. Like, I love this stuff. When we think about sort of, connecting me in practical applications, one thing I do wanna just throw out there is when your bank or credit union has its board meeting, are people even using the words millennials? Do we have a millennial or generational strategy? Because if we don't, it's a missed opportunity. And so I think that's a good sort of self check for anybody right now, whether you're a CMO or the head of digital or any of these things. Like, is this a conversation that's even happening at the board level? Because if it's not, we need to have it happen. However you want to do that, share the study, reach out to me. But the idea is, if the board's not on board, we're not going to get it done. So I speak to boards all the time, and I just think it's so important that we have to educate them on why this is urgent and imperative, and we've got to be able to take action. So for me personally, that's just really important. In terms of our work, love to speak for you at any event that you have, whether that's a quarterly meeting, a state meeting, a national conference. Feel free to reach out. You can connect with me. LinkedIn is usually the easiest, but any of the others are totally fine too. Visit our website or my website. But to me, when we think about practical actions, what I love to do, and I would challenge everybody to do this, is go back and look at your customers or your members and create what we call a generational snapshot. And all you're going to do is take the birth years. They're on my website. You can find them, in other places, and create a pie chart that shows you the percentage of each generation represented in your membership or in your customer base, and just look at that now and imagine what it's going to be in the next 3 to 5 years. For me, when we present that to our clients, it's always shocking. And for bonus points, because you know me, I like to bring a bunch of different visions to something we call it generational context. So we want different perspectives. I love when we can do the same thing for the team members. So go in and look at the teams and see what generations do they represent. And when we look at managers of and above, what do they represent? What we find is people are shocked by the generational compositions of their organizations, those they serve
Yeah.
and those they lead. And once people see that, then they're able to go, oh, wow, we really need to take some action on communication, trust, digital, different things like that. So feel free to reach out. We have lots of free resources on my website. But most importantly, talk to the people at Alkami. I've spent so much time with them. They have great insights, great data, and great solutions. And I've always enjoyed working with them because they're super nice. So that
We
is a
love working
bonus.
with you. And for anybody considering Jason for one of your conferences, I cannot enthusiastically recommend him enough. He's amazing. He brings the house
No, thanks.
down, always a crowd pleaser and always so super informative. So we're just really
No,
lucky to
thank
get
you.
to work with you. Well, that
No,
will do it. Jason, I want to thank you again for just putting together an amazing study once again. This has become one of our perennial studies. We do it at least once every couple of years, but I really love what you and the team have done of taking a snapshot of millennials 15 years post the Great Recession and in a really interesting dynamic in their lifestyles right now, an inflationary rate environment, and just really, I think, debunking a lot of myths like you always do, and challenging our perspectives on what we think is truth out there. So well done, and thank you for always enlightening the rest of us on the good work that you and the team there at CGK do.
Oh, thank you. It's always an honor to partner with y'all. We get to work on such cool things, which I love. So thank you. And thanks to everybody joining today. This is a great conversation. I have tons of data and I can't wait to hear how you put it to use. So thanks for your time today.
Yay. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Please download the white paper and reach out with any questions or comments. We'd love to hear from you.